Good day. I'm Father Deacon Andrew Bennett, and I'm a senior fellow with the North America Action Team at the Religious Freedom Institute. And I'm recording this video way up north in Ottawa, Canada. And I want to take some time to explore with you today the whole question of who we are as human beings. What is it about us? What is it about our personhood that relates to religious freedom? So there's some fundamental questions we have to explore first. The first is, who are you? Who am I? And then moving on, what does it mean to be a human being? What does it mean to be a person? And how does our personhood relate to our inherent freedom of religion? And we can trace this understanding of the human person and its relation, and our relationship to religious freedom quite a far ways back to classical times. Aristotle described human beings as rational animals. And like other animals, humans pursue survival, reproduction, and material welfare. However, we know ourselves as human beings that we also have qualities that separate us from other animals, including the capacity to contemplate why we act in certain ways, to evolve how we act, depending on certain circumstances. And we also have a desire to understand what exists beyond ourselves, and also a desire to understand what exists within ourselves, within the inner life of each person. So according to Aristotle, humans have what he called rational souls. In other words, we are rational by nature. We are thinking humanity, Homo sapiens, right? In the ancient understanding, reason is not simply the ability to score high on an IQ test or to solve a math problem. The Greeks understood reason more broadly as the capacity for self-control, self-reflection, and self-awareness, even at a very young age. Only people can direct their own behavior by reflecting on the life they want to live. And this is something that really distinguishes us from other animals. In the Judeo-Christian tradition that I come from, human beings are understood to be created in the image and likeness of God, and to be called continually into a relationship with God. Now, that desire comes out of our capacity for self-transcendence, to see beyond ourselves, to see beyond that which exists in the physical world around us. So to put it really simply, we possess the capacity as persons to think beyond our immediate needs and to contemplate what exists beyond us, such as God, the overall meaning of things. As creatures, humans possess a three-part nature. We are body, mind, and soul. Humans have two different characteristics. A material characteristic, those things that are linked to the world by the body, and a spiritual characteristic, open to transcendence, open to the discovery of more penetrating truths thanks to the intellect. Judaism and Christianity understand that to be human means to have the ability to comprehend, approach, and encounter God, who made us in his image and likeness. And many other religious traditions have different understandings around this idea of the contemplation of the divine, the ability to approach the divine. So, in contrast to other animals, only humans have a relationship with the metaphysical, a relationship that is based on our personhood and through which we desire communion with God. Now, let me maybe give you a little bit of an illustration. I want you to picture a black bear who, it's late autumn, he's foraging through the woods, winter is quickly rushing towards him, and what is the bear focused on? His stomach. He knows that he has to gather enough roots and berries and any sort of matter that he can consume during the long winter months of hibernation. That's his focus. That's his instinct. As he's foraging around in the woods, the bear is not thinking to himself, "Oh, this is so unfair. Why do I have to do this? Why is my lot such? I want to pursue opera. I want to consider the beauties of art. What is there beyond my existence?" The bear's not thinking of this. When the bear retreats to his den for hibernation, he needs a place that is safe, that is warm, and that is stocked with food. He's not thinking, I'd really like to put down some nice, Turkish carpets here. I think that would make it look much nicer. Or maybe put some frescoes on the walls. The bear is not concerned about these things. The bear doesn't contemplate beauty. The bear is not thinking about his relationship with the transcendent. But he is beautiful in that because he's a bear. Just as we as human beings are beautiful in how we have this metaphysical need, something that Professor David Novak at the University of Toronto talks about. We have a metaphysical need to seek and to come to know that which is beyond us. And to ask these fundamental questions that I started off with. Who am I? Who are you? What is this community that I exist in? What is this world in which I live? What's my relationship to God? Or perhaps if I don't have a theistic belief, what's my relationship to a particular philosophical tradition? How do I understand me? How do I understand my place in the world? How do I understand my relationship to something beyond me? As one of America's leading commentators on some of these questions, David Brooks, has said, I don't ask you to believe in God or not believe in God, but I do ask you to believe that you have a soul. There is a piece of your consciousness that has no shape, no size, no weight or color. This is the piece of you that is of infinite value and dignity. So if we have this dignity, what is it about this dignity that is important? What is it about me that gives me dignity? In the Judeo-Christian tradition, human dignity comes from God's act of creation. God made human beings in his own likeness and image, and human dignity is thus grounded for Jews and Christians and some other traditions, acting as a key focus of unity between many different faiths. However, even people who doubt God's existence believe human beings have inherent value, some attribute or indiscernible quality that gives each of us ultimate worth. And here we're reminded that human beings are not objects to be used, but subjects to be respected and to be loved. And that coming into communion with one another in our common life reveals this reality of human dignity to us. A human being is not just something, a human being is someone. Humans have a natural capacity for self-transcendence. The Catholic philosopher Dietrich von Hildebrand wrote that humans have spiritual organs, such as the powers of knowing, willing, and loving. Only human beings can rise above the struggle for physical survival faced by other creatures. And remember our friend the black bear. And the preoccupations of everyday life to reflect on their lives, the world around them, the meaning of existence. The Austrian psychologist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl wrote, "The essentially self-transcendent quality of human existence renders man a being reaching out beyond himself." So this capacity for moving out from ourselves to others in whom we are called to encounter a shared dignity is an important part of our humanity and of our personhood. Moreover, the ability people have to reach beyond themselves also implies the responsibility to do so. Abraham Joshua Heschel, one of the leading Jewish thinkers of the 20th century, emphasized the demand that comes with being born human. Becoming fully human requires living a truly human life, a life that is open to what lies beyond the self. Frankl wrote, "Being a person depends on being alive to the wonder and mystery that surround us." Heschel makes it clear that pursuing truth and meaning is humanizing and essential to living a life worthy of the dignity that we have as humans. For those who espouse a philosophical belief without God, belief in human dignity may still be evident in their desire to work for a more just and compassionate society. So this might lead us to consider, is my human dignity something external or internal? Different groups throughout history have held variously demeaning attitudes towards other groups, other religious groups, other ethnic groups, and so forth. Up until the mid to late 20th century, under Jim Crow in the southern United States and under apartheid in South Africa, the belief that African Americans, people of color, were somehow less human than whites of European origin, and that this was reflected in law. Similar laws or societal attitudes at different points in human history and in different countries have sought to dehumanize or diminish the humanity of a person because of their ethnicity, because of their religious beliefs, of their economic or social status. We can cite here the attitudes of Hutus towards the Tutsis in Rwanda and Burundi that contributed to the Rwandan genocide in 1994. We can think about the forced assimilation of Koreans under Japanese rule during the first half of the 20th century. Again, another example of how one ethnic group denied the dignity of another. These deeply prejudicial views were rooted in a lie, that a person's dignity is based on something external. Human characteristics such as ethnic background and skin color vary from person to person, but do not determine different levels of dignity. Regardless of our ethnic background, our sex, our religion, our wealth, or our poverty, we are all human and bear a dignity that is internal. Our dignity rests within us. As we've already discussed above, in this Judeo-Christian understanding, we share a common human nature. And it's this common human nature that we need to remember when we talk about why we defend religious freedom. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. expressed it in this way: every man has a capacity to have fellowship with God, and this gives him a uniqueness. It gives him worth. It gives him dignity. And we must never forget this as a nation. There are no gradations in the image of God. Every man, from a treble white to a bass black, is significant on God's keyboard, precisely because every man is made in the image of God. So finally, how then is our freedom of religion and conscience related to our dignity as human beings? If we accept the dignity of the human person and all that that entails, as I've been discussing, then the human person is free by virtue of their humanity. We have a radical freedom. But it's not a radical freedom to do whatever we want, but rather a radical freedom to pursue what is good and what is true. Fundamental freedoms that relate to the rational actions of human beings, such as expression and association with others, must be inherent and pre-existing. And the state, government, has historically accepted this reality, as we see in the Bill of Rights, especially in the First Amendment. These freedoms are not the gift of the state. They exist because of our humanity. The ability to freely exercise them can be constrained, yet due to their inherent character, they can never be fully taken away. Religious freedom is bound together with other inherent freedoms, yet it has a unique character given its acknowledgement of the human person's unique and profound search for meaning, for truth, and for God, or meaning in another philosophical context. Indeed, our ability to contemplate the transcendent is elemental to our humanity, as I mentioned earlier. Religious freedom is rooted in the fact that human beings have a natural desire to know the truth. Since human beings desire the truth, they must be free to search for it without external interference. Religious freedom, therefore, does not reflect an indifference toward truth, but instead recognizes the inherent desire that every person has for the truth, and to live and be bound by the truth once they have encountered it. Such an understanding of religious freedom can be found in a variety of religious traditions. The Muslim scholar and former president of Indonesia, Abdul Rahman Wahid, expressed it in this way: indeed, the search for truth, for example, the search for God, whether employing the intellect, emotions, or various forms of spiritual practice, should be allowed a free and broad range. For without freedom, the individual soul cannot attain absolute truth, which is by its very nature unconditional freedom itself. Ultimately, freedom of religion protects the human duty to pursue truth and meaning and to pursue a knowledge of the transcendent, of God. As the Catholic philosopher Jacques Maritain stated, this freedom also protects those who choose not to profess a particular religious faith. He said, "For those who do not believe in God or who do not profess Christianity, if they do, however, believe in the dignity of the human person, in justice, in liberty, in neighborly love, they also can cooperate in the realization of such a conception of society and cooperate in the common good. Of course, the exercise of this freedom has reasonable limits. Its exercise cannot violate the human dignity of another, for example, in advocating violence or abuse against those who hold different beliefs. It is bound together with the other fundamental freedoms inherent to human beings, through which we are able to live fully as we are called to be, bearing the image and likeness of God and being in community with one another. So thank you for allowing me to be with you today, and I hope that this brief introduction to an anthropological view of religious freedom and to the nature of our human dignity from myself, coming out of a Catholic tradition, is of assistance to you, and it helps you to grow in your understanding of this important fundamental freedom. Thank you very much, and God bless you.